The honourable member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is coming up to the middle of May. The boating season in British Columbia has already begun, and so I am here to encourage the government to move forward on its legislation to deal with the long-standing problem of abandoned vessels. These problems are well enumerated, and I know that the government has said repeatedly that they share my commitment to finding a long-standing resolution, a comprehensive countrywide solution, as have most other maritime countries, in some cases decades ago. And so my question is not about the level of the government's commitment. I am seeking a very specific update on when the government will return Bill C-64 to this House for further debate. It was 2 months ago that it was returned by committee to this House. And I will also indicate my hope that the reason for delay in returning the bill to the House is that the minister himself is considering the amendments that I proposed at committee that the Liberal members of committee voted down, but maybe the government is still considering the fine details of those amendments. So that's the only reason I can imagine why the government would not already have this back at the House and already be moving forward with the next stages of debate and reading, so that we can actually finally see some resolution, and especially boaters this summer can be out there saying, isn't it great that we have an abandoned vessel solution legislated by our federal government? It would build some faith and some trust. You'll remember that the bill was fast-tracked by the NDP. It was quite rare to get the House's unanimous consent to move it to committee so quickly, but I was very glad to have been able to initiate that. I'm glad that the House agreed, and glad that Transport Committee switched itself away from its other business and focused on this study, and glad that we got so many witnesses who spoke so clearly about the solutions that coastal communities had been advocating. They were in my legislation. You'll recall, Mr. Speaker, Bill C-352, which was blocked by the Liberal-dominated PROC committee and then voted down by, again, Liberal members. It was not even heard in the House. But nevertheless, I tried to transport the elements of that legislation into the minister's Bill C-64. So as a reminder, some of those pieces that I hope maybe the minister is now considering now, it being the only explanation for why C-64 would be so delayed, is the government now considering bringing into its bill a vessel turn-in program modeled on the Cash for Clunkers program? Is it considering creating a dedicated fee to put a fund aside to deal with the backlog of abandoned vessels, since C-64 does not address the backlog of abandoned vessels? Is the government planning to legislate to formalize Coast Guard's role in dealing with abandoned vessels? When that was in former MP Jean Crowder's legislation 3 years ago in the previous Parliament, all of the Liberal Party voted in support of it, including the now Transport Minister, Fisheries Minister and Prime Minister. Is the government delaying C-64 so that it can incorporate those coastal solutions into the abandoned vessel legislation?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for her question. Mr. Speaker, our government is very proud to be implementing a comprehensive national strategy to address the issue of abandoned and wrecked vessels. This strategy, which goes well beyond the proposed Wrecked, Abandoned or Hazarded Vessel Act, or Bill C-64, was developed after discussions with a broad cross-section of stakeholders, interest groups, and Indigenous communities. These include local communities such as Saanich Inlet and industry associations such as the National Marine Manufacturers Association. It is also based on lessons learned and best practices observed in jurisdictions in the United States, such as Washington State. Bill C-64 is a critical element of the strategy, and we remain committed to bringing it into force as soon as possible. All parties have expressed their support for this legislation, as have numerous witnesses before the standing committee that reviewed this draft bill. It is past due that a framework be put in place that ensures owners are responsible and liable for their vessels at the end of life. We are working in partnership with provinces and territories, given their extensive experience and expertise, to explore ways we could enhance the existing pleasure craft licensing system. At the same time, we are studying options to enhance the vessel registry system to increase our ability to hold commercial vessel owners accountable. Our government has also heard calls from the local communities about the need to address the backlog of abandoned and wrecked vessels. This is why in 2017, we fast-tracked the introduction of new programs designed to assist communities across the country in removing and disposing of these problem vessels impacting our communities today.
Member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With respect, the member didn't answer my question, so I'll say it in a different way. If you're so pleased with C-64 and if it's so ready to go, why is it stalled again? It's been 2 months. The communities are demanding a much broader solution than what's in C-64, but nevertheless, let's bring it back to the House and get it done. What could possibly be the explanation if the bill is in such perfect shape? Why not bring it back now? And if their government is going to continue to delay, can the member please assure me that the Transport Ministry is using this long delay for good purpose and actually inserting the solutions that coastal communities asked for into C-64? So far, they were all voted down at committee, and I'm hoping that the Transport Minister himself has got a different view.
The Honourable Parliament Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to assure you, Mr. Speaker, and my honourable colleague that we are committed to moving Bill C-64 forward. In fact, we have heard from some of the communities that we've been engaging with that more has been done in 2 years than in the past 20. It took the state of Washington over 10 years to establish their regime. We are striving to establish ours in a much shorter period. When it comes to abandoned and derelict ship, this government is moving full speed ahead. And I want to assure my honourable colleague that we remain committed to moving Bill C-64 through the parliamentary process and have it come into force as soon as practical. While this is happening, we have and continue to take concrete actions to address the problem of abandoned and wrecked vessels. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.